The 80-20 principle. Do less, achieve more. Two students are preparing for an exam. Both have the same amount of time, 30 days. The first creates an ideal plan. All chapters, all topics, evenly, in order. He moves methodically through the material, not missing a single page. The second looks at the syllabus and asks, which 5 topics make up the foundation of the exam? He ignores half the textbook and dives only into those topics. Guess who gets the better grade? The paradox is that the second student worked half as much, but understood twice as much, because he knew a secret the first one missed. Not all textbook pages are equal. Not all tasks are equally important. Not all efforts produce the same result. In 1896, Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto was walking in his garden and noticed an oddity. 80% of the peas grew on just 20% of the pods. Curiosity drove him to dig deeper. He studied the distribution of wealth in Italy. It turned out 20% of the population owned 80% of the land. He didn't discover an anomaly, he discovered a law of nature. And this law governs your life right now. The question is only, do you know about it? We have drowned in the cult of activity. More tasks, more goals, more projects, more meetings. Social media has turned life into a spectacle of productivity. People post screenshots of their to-do lists, brag about working 7 days a week, wear their busyness like a medal. But here is what no one says out loud. Most of this frantic activity is a waste of time. You can answer 100 emails in a day and not move a millimeter closer to your goal. You can spend 8 hours in the office and do exactly 0 important things. You can be insanely busy and absolutely ineffective. The Pareto principle is a sobering slap in the face to all this hustle. It is the voice of reason that says, stop. Look at what you are doing and ask yourself, does this even matter? Because if you don't choose consciously where to spend your energy, the world will choose for you, and most likely, it will choose wrong. The universe is unfair, not in a moral sense, in a mathematical one. The distribution of almost everything in nature and society follows a power law. A small number of causes produces the majority of effects. Look at language. In English, there are more than 170,000 words, but studies show that just 300 words make up 65% of everything we say and write. The remaining 170,000? Exoticisms, decorations, rarities. Look at the economy. 20% of companies in any industry generate 80% of the profits. 20% of customers bring 80% of the revenue. 20% of products yield 80% of sales. Look at crime. A small group of repeat offenders commits the vast majority of crimes. In New Orleans in the 90s, it was found that just 10% of addresses generated 60% of police calls. It works in reverse, too. 20% of roads get 80% of the traffic. 20% of the carpet in your apartment gets 80% of the wear, the paths where you constantly walk. Joseph Juran, a quality engineer who popularized the Pareto principle in business, called this the vital few and the trivial many. The vital few. Think about these words. In your life right now, there are a few things, people, habits, actions, decisions, that produce the majority of your results. Happiness, income, meaning, growth, and everything else, noise. Here is where we make a catastrophic mistake. We were taught that fairness is equality, that we need to treat everything equally, pay equal attention to all subjects, all people, all tasks. It sounds noble, but it is a recipe for mediocrity. Look at Churchill, one of the greatest leaders of the 20th century. He failed math in school, twice failed to get into military college, was a terrible student in almost all subjects, except history and English. He leaned into what he was good at, ignored the rest. The result? He became a master of words and historical strategy. It was these skills that saved Britain in World War II. His speeches inspired the nation. His understanding of history helped foresee the enemy's moves. If he had spent his energy trying to become average in everything, the world would have lost a genius. Here is the brutal truth. An even distribution of effort guarantees that you will be average everywhere and outstanding nowhere. Psychologist Abraham Maslow, who studied self-actualization, discovered a pattern. People who achieved greatness in their fields were almost always one-sided. They sacrificed much for the sake of one thing. They were not well-rounded. They were monomaniacs. Picasso was a terrible husband and father, but a genius artist. Einstein forgot to feed himself if his wife was away, but changed our understanding of the universe. This is not an excuse for their personal flaws. It is an observation of how greatness works. It requires an uneven distribution of attention. Your energy is limited. Your time is limited. Your attention is limited. If you spread these resources in a thin layer over the entire surface of life, you will break through the surface nowhere. But if you focus them on a single point, you will go through walls. Every yes is a no to something else. Every choice to do something is a choice not to do something else. Most people don't understand this intuitively. They think they can do everything, just need to manage time better, be more efficient, sleep less. No, you cannot do everything, not even close. Peter Drucker, the father of modern management, formulated this crystal clear. There is nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency what should not be done at all. Think about it. You can perfectly optimize a task that doesn't matter. You can do the wrong things with incredible efficiency, and that is exactly what the majority does. Here is an exercise that changes perspective. Make a list of everything you did last week, all tasks, all meetings, all work. Now ask yourself about each item. If I hadn't done this at all, what would have really changed in a month? Be honest, brutally honest. Most discover a shocking thing. Half the list can be thrown away without consequences. A third was actively harmful, distracted from the important. And only a small remainder, 20% or less, really mattered. Warren Buffett, the investment legend, uses a method he calls the 25 and 5 rule. Write down 25 things you want to do. Pick the 5 most important. Everything else? That is not your do later list. That is your avoid at all costs list. Because these 20 things will tempt you. They will seem important. They will steal your attention from the truly critical 5. Greatness is not about doing more. Greatness is about ruthlessly rejecting the good for the sake of the great. Okay, the logic is clear, but how to apply this in practice? How to define what your 20% are? Here are 3 filters that work. Filter 1, the irreversibility test. Ask yourself, if I stop doing this, is the process reversible? Can I return to this later without catastrophic consequences? If yes, most likely it is the 80%. If no, possibly the 20%. Relationships with children are irreversible. You won't get their childhood back. These are the critical 20%. Answering a work email? Reversible, 80%. Filter 2, the multiplicative effect. Which actions create a cascade of consequences? What opens new opportunities? One conversation with the right person can change a career. One habit can transform health. One book can rebuild a mindset. Look for points of leverage where a small effort produces a disproportionate result. Filter 3, the energy and flow test. What work fills you up? After what are you tired but satisfied? Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi discovered the phenomenon of flow, a state of complete immersion where time disappears. Usually, this happens when you do what perfectly matches your unique abilities. This is your 20%, where only you can create maximum value. Everything else? Delegate, automate, eliminate. Tim Ferriss in The 4-Hour Workweek describes this as selective ignorance, an active decision to ignore most information and tasks, not because you are lazy, because you realized that attention is your most valuable resource, and you no longer give it to what doesn't matter. But let's pause, because there is a danger in this thinking. The Pareto principle can turn into a cold calculator of utility, where every action is evaluated through ROI, where people become instruments, where life turns into endless optimization. This is the path to efficiency without meaning. Not everything must be productive. Not everything must bring a measurable result. A walk without a goal, a conversation with a friend that won't give you new connections, a book that won't make you richer or smarter, but will make you feel something. This is also part of life, and maybe the most important one. So here is the nuance. Use the 80-20 principle in working on goals, in achieving results, in professional growth. But leave space for the 80% in other areas, for beauty, for play, for things that simply make life worth living. The paradox is that exactly these unproductive moments often birth breakthroughs. Archimedes discovered his law in a bathtub. Newton realized gravity resting under a tree. Einstein came to insights playing the violin. Sometimes the 80% feed the 20. Sometimes rest is work. Vilfredo Pareto was an economist. He studied the distribution of wealth, but he discovered something universal. He discovered that the universe is not democratic, that cause and effect are connected non-linearly, that the small can spawn the great, and the great can fit in the small. This is not a call to laziness. This is a call to wisdom. Wisdom is not knowing everything. Wisdom is knowing what is important. Every day, the world offers you thousands of opportunities to spend time. The majority will accept them all, will run, fuss, work to exhaustion, and remain in place, because they didn't understand a simple truth. Not all movement is progress. Not all work is achievement. Not all busyness is life. Your 20% is not a formula. It is a question you ask yourself every day. What of what I am doing actually matters, and the courage to let go of everything else. So here is the final challenge. Pick one thing you do regularly that eats up time, but to be honest, moves you to no goal, and give it up, right now, for a week. See what happens. Write in the comments, what did you give up, and what did you discover in the space that opened up?